Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I knew you were.
Welcome, everyone, to the May 16th, 2023 City Council meeting. This evening, we have a long consent agenda, including the council minutes of May 2nd, EDA May 8th, Community Center May 8th, Planning Commission May 9th, Library Board May 9th, Utility Commission May 10th. The license applications include amplification permits from Preferred Choice House on June 3rd, Fat Pheasant Pub for the Riverfest on June 10th, the Torkelson Run August 26th, Windom Chamber of Commerce. They include the Riverfest Cookout on June 6th, Riverfest Concert June 9th, Riverfest Courthouse Square June 10th, Riverfest Family Fun Day June 11th. Also included are the regular bills. Council have any questions? And if not, I'd entertain someone to make the motion to approve.
I would make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion Jenny, second Scott. Any discussion? Seeing none, that motion carries. Department heads. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye. Wow. Any opposed? Motion carries. It's been a long day. Sorry. Now, department heads. Hey, we got hardware sitting at the table.
It's not me.
Well,
John Nelson, liquor store manager. I got two things for you guys tonight. The first thing is at the annual MMBA conference, I submitted the liquor store for Best Community Involvement Award for the work that we've done with Ducks Unlimited, Lions Club, and the Chamber with their nonprofit on sales that they do, and then the pallet raffle for Ducks Unlimited that we did last year. We were chosen as the winner. So with that, we get this lovely hardware that we'll display in the store, and we also get $300 towards a community project. So question would be, what would we want to do with that? A suggestion would be to turn it over towards the Lions Club Park Shelter, towards that as part of a donation, or if there's some other type of park project that the council would like to see it go for, I'm open to that.
do you want suggestions now?
If you guys have some suggestions, that'd be great. We don't have the check yet, but it will be coming, so.
We
What
will
about-
have to accept the check as a
Understand.
donation to the city. Yep. So
Just suggestion though, how's the Veterans Memorial funded?
At this point, it's fully funded.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. Anyone have any other comments they'd like to make? Leave it up to them. Okay. Okay, somewhere in city parks then, right? Okay.
That's my
And we'll
opinion.
leave that up to the liquor store.
And I can do the committee as well.
Yep,
We'll
yep,
meet on
very
that,
good.
so.
So what we have is a check coming for $300. Would the council like to, that should probably be in resolution, Steve? Will you wait?
next meeting. and the
Next meeting?
resolution.
Okay. Next meeting, we'll tackle the resolution for you.
Okay.
Very good.
Second item of business is our building design update. So as of this coming Thursday, Steve and I will meet with the architects and engineers, the TSP, We will be at 100% of our design phase. From there, they'll go into the construction documents. They hope to have that wrapped up by mid-June. From there, it will go out for bid. They should have all the bids back by the middle to end of July. And then we will review that and with TSP. And then the plan is to have it at the August 1st council meeting for council approval.
Question I have, do you, you're gonna do a final review coming up? Is that what you're, with the architect?
So there was a 50% design meeting 2-3 weeks ago that the liquor committee, Councilmember Benson and Quaid, John and I participated with the architect, the structural engineer, civil engineer, mechanical engineer, and those folks. So we went through, answered, most of the questions that they had. I think liquor committee was good with the design, and so that got pushed off to TSP to finalize those documents, and that's what we're going to review at this meeting on Thursday.
With that, will we have a cost estimate available at that time?
There probably will be an engineer or an architect's estimate of cost, yeah.
Okay, that was my question. I'd like to see that when it, prior to the advertising part of it. Okay. Council have any questions?
Just to note, we have given them a budget, which is what was discussed here, so, yeah, just so
I
everybody
wasn't
else
at
is
that
aware.
meeting, so I missed that one.
I think Jenny added another 0 because you were gone.
I think, yes, I think that was set well on purpose while I was gone. Yep. And John knows that as well. All right, thank you, John. Congratulations. Good job nominating yourself. That's good. It's always good to take advantage of the great departments and city staff we have, so that's great. Any other department heads? All right, Tim's here. All right.
Tim Hogan, Recreation Director. Just want to give an update to the council. We just had an Arena Booster Club meeting just a little bit ago, and at that meeting there was a request to purchase an equestrian drag for the arena. The Booster Club did agree to fund the equestrian drag, so they are looking at purchasing roughly about $6,300 for an equestrian drag for the arena. So we're working with a company. When back in January, I started looking at different drags and different things of potentially upgrading the drag that we had down there at the arena. We're looking at different options. We were, looking at just upgrading the one we have or moving to an equestrian drag. But based on the financial side of it, we didn't know how far we'd be able to get with that. But there was a request presented at the Arena Booster Club meeting today. They did grant it, so we are working with the company to get a purchase order so those funds can be sent off for a new equestrian drag for the arena. So, and that will be, just so everybody's aware, owned by the Arena Booster Club. So,
Could I ask what a equestrian drag is?
so equestrian drags are designed specifically for footings for horses. So they are designed, I mean, you can get into some that are $15,000, $20,000. Those have watering tanks on them that will apply water to the footing to keep dust down, to keep the footing intact, different things like that. This model is not going to have a watering tank on it, but it has several different attachments to it, which will not only dig up the footing, but then drag it, and it has a leveling bar that will spin behind it just to maintain the footing after riding in use. So we look forward and thank the Booster Club for their commitment to purchasing that for us.
Okay, and I would, we won't have to accept that if they have it, right?
They own it.
They own it. Very good. Jenny?
I was just going to make a comment. I think we talked about this at a previous meeting, talking about the arena when I brought up about needing a drag or that equipment. And I think I compared it to, it's a Zamboni for the horse show. And so really it is a thing and it is an expensive thing. So that's really great that that funding's coming through for that.
Any other questions for Tim? Very good. Sounds great. Any other department heads? Yep, you're up. We are going to talk about the resolution that's in your packet too. Oh, do you have something else first? Okay.
Yeah, I figured I'd just come up and right before the other item, just update the council on the transmission line project that is about to start. We've been waiting quite a long time, almost 2 years for this thing to get to the final steps here. COVID really slowed it down with materials and everything else, but we had our pre-construction meeting at the beginning of May. Notified that the contractor has everything, all the materials and everything except for the laminated poles, but they do have a delivery date on those now. It's the last week in June. So contractors planning on having their crews come in and start framing up poles, and we got a big steel pole that they have to pour a concrete footing for over by the elevator, on the new elevator. So work's probably going to get started the week of July 4th or the week after that. And they are anticipating a pretty smooth project. So the foreman and the superintendent, the foreman has 17 years experience and the superintendent is about 25, I believe is what he said. So we got a pretty experienced crew, or at least on the top side anyways.
Any questions for Jason? Marv?
What's the name of the contractor? So when we see the trucks, we know what they're doing?
IES, and they're out of Lincoln, Nebraska is the headquarters.
And will this require any street closures, or you'll do your normal blocking off and whatnot?
We're looking at doing a street closure on the service road behind McDonald's all the way down to the power plant. We'll probably go one block at a time, and that's going to be for tearing down the old line. Through there, they're going to have a crane. They're going to take the wires off, hook up a crane, and then they're going to chop that top 30 feet of the pole off and then just kind of take it out of there. So they're not anticipating having to do an outage on taking that down right now. So that'll be really good because there's really no way to completely backfeed all those businesses along the service road there. So
What was the completion date on that?
I want to say end of August 31st, I believe.
Good question, Marv. You stumped him on that, I think. Yeah. Yep, it'll be a good project to have done, I'm sure. Long time coming. Very good. Thank you. Now, without any other questions, we can talk about the bid award potentially for the electric department truck shed.
So I'm here tonight to ask the council to award the bid for the construction of a new truck garage on the property of the electric department. The bid amount with both alternates. Alternate one was the paving out front for the apron, and alternate two was to go with a standing seam roof, so it'll have no roof penetrations other than the two sewer vents that have to come out. So that cost was $1,422,793.95.
And I believe the engineer's estimate was higher than that?
Engineer's estimate was originally $850,000, but this was for a much smaller building, really only to replace the square footage that we are tearing out. It was kind of decided to utilize the full property and put up a building instead of wasting space. So we put up an adequate sized building for, future use, larger equipment down the road. Who knows what we'll have in 50 years from now, but
Okay. Council have any questions on that recommendation? Okay, hearing no questions on that, I guess I will open that up to an introduction of the resolution.
Well, I know we've used Wilcon in the past on multiple projects. They're a good contractor, so I would introduce resolution awarding the contract for the truck to garage addition.
I'll second that.
Okay, the resolution of award made by Marv, second by Dennis. Any discussion or other comments? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Benson.
Yes.
Grunig.
Yes.
Esplin.
Yes.
Nelson. Quaid.
Yes.
Very good, and that resolution carries. Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Spielman.
Good evening, Andy Spielman, Building and Zoning Official. I've included in your packet this evening a memo regarding our land use code, and included in the packet when it went out was a link. That link goes to the city's webpage. On the homepage of the website now is the full land use code revision. With is fine. Okay. The memo kind of explains a little bit of the background, but I'll just touch on the background of this project and how we got to where we are right now, and then the process moving forward a little bit. So as the memo states, except for a few revisions to different sections, our land use and subdivision code has been in effect since 2003. Staff and planning commission saw a need to review the entire land use code. Many reasons, but we want to make sure that our code is relevant and adequate, that it's meeting the city's needs, the current property owners' needs, and also developers' needs to ensure that our code is in compliance with state statute. One thing to kind of point out is when it comes to land use codes, subdivision codes, the city has broad discretion when we're writing them. Once they're written, we're bound to what's written. So if there's a use that's listed as permitted, we have to allow it. Conditional uses, we have several conditional uses in our zoning districts that in some cases it almost feels like they're maybe not the appropriate use, so it was listed as a conditional use. But if it's listed as a conditional use, essentially it's deemed to be a permitted use. We can just look at each project specifically and add conditions that are appropriate. So that's kind of an example of once the code is written and it's there, we have very little discretion as far as how we regulate it and following it. As part of this project, we hired a consultant. We felt it was important to have an impartial review and make suggestions based on experience and expertise. The Planning Commission has really taken the lead on this. Our commission, it's a little bit unique as far as boards and commissions go. We have 8 members, which is quite a few, and by our city charter, they have to come 2 members from each ward and each precinct throughout town. So the 8-person board is comprised of individuals that live throughout the city. Our current commission, we have a pretty good dispersion, or however you want to put it, of various backgrounds, professions, ages, and viewpoints. Because of that, many of the meetings that we discussed became quite long. They were filled with a lot of discussion and a lot of debate. And I will say that not all of the amendments that are in the code were unanimously approved. This was very heavily discussed and debated and deliberated by the Planning Commission. We've been working on this for over a year. There have been 12 or 13 meetings. I think 5 of those meetings the consultant was present at. What's included in your packet and what's posted on the website, though, was unanimously approved at the last Planning Commission as a recommendation to the council to move forward. The meeting minutes for that meeting were included in your packet, and we were able to have 2 council members that were present for that, so they got to kind of see a little bit of what we went through to get to where we are now. The link that was provided to you, that's on the city's website right now, so that is out there for the public to view. When you're viewing that, kind of how it's set up is the yellow text with strike-throughs is proposed deletion from code. Red text is proposed addition, and then the black text with the white background is current code, exactly how we see it right now today. I've also added some comments in the sidebar. These just briefly explain the reasoning to some of the bigger revisions. With that, we plan to advertise this in the paper at least 2 times. There will also be a public hearing notice that's issued, and I'm going to try and take advantage of our Did You Know spot to get one more place in the paper so the public is well aware of the process and what's going on, and give them a chance to come to the meeting where we'll be discussing this openly. So with that, the action that I'm requesting tonight is to call for a public hearing. We're going to ask the council set that for June 6th. The consultants that we've been working with have confirmed that they will be able to attend on June 6th. So I'll kind of take the direction the council wants me to go in. If you want, we can quickly run through the code, look at some of the highlights. I'm sure you've all spent your weekend reading through it and you're well versed in it, so if you have initial comments or questions, I'd be happy to discuss them as well. So I think I'll start with that, and if you want to get into the code, we can do that now, or you can have more time to look through it, and then during the public hearing time, comment as well.
My understanding is changes can be made to it during the public comment and final council comments. Is that right?
Yep, so we'll hold the public hearing. After that, since it is a code amendment, it would require 2 readings by the council. At this time, I'm not planning on asking the council to hold the first reading on June 6th, depending on what we get for public comment, depending on what the council has for comments. If there are things that come out of that where we need to go back and make some amendments or some changes, we do plan on holding a planning commission meeting on June 27th. So that would be our opportunity to bring those comments back to the planning commission, and then potentially we could do the first and second reading of the ordinance at the July meetings. So we're not really rushing through it. We do have time to make changes.
Any comments?
At this point, are all those changes had a legal review?
No, at this time, they haven't had a legal review. The code also, when you're reading through it, I guess one thing I should mention is if you're comparing it to exactly what's in code now, there are going to be some areas that are deleted. That's intentionally. This review did not include our wetlands, our shorelands, or our floodplain. All of those have a little bit higher standard to them, have to be reviewed by DNR. Airport zoning code is in this chapter. I've deleted those on purpose because they weren't part of this review, and it was just to try and shorten the code. The final formatting isn't done either. Obviously, the way it's written now, once we get to final formatting, we would have to delete all of the highlighted text, and it would just screw up all of our scrolling and formatting. So instead of trying to do it twice, the thought would be that it would have legal review after the public hearing, after the council's had a chance to make their comments, and then sometime in between first and second reading, we would have legal review before full adoption.
as basically the enforcement person, are you on board with all the changes then?
Yeah, I can tell you that all of the changes that I proposed are not in there. But yes, I'm on board with what we have. I think a lot of what we've done has cleaned up the code. We've eliminated, in all the zoning districts, we've eliminated some running text where we, by text and line by line, and we've incorporated that into charts and tables. That makes it easier to find, easier to read. We've eliminated a lot of the redundancies and the repetitiveness of code. When we get that, it's just, you're more open to trying to pick and choose, does this apply here or does it apply there, or misunderstandings or misinterpretations. So cleaning up some of those repetitive things. And then over the years, we've made revisions to like our accessory space ordinance. Different sections have been revised over the years, and we did find a number of places where we referenced a section in code where it was either the incorrect reference number or the title that we were referencing is incorrect. A lot of the language, we defined something one way, but then when you get to the body of the text, it was using different terminology. So we've tried to clean that up to be consistent with, from definitions to subsection titles to the body and the text of what the code is saying. So a lot of those things are good things and will make it easier on the regulating side.
Jenny?
I think after, sitting in on that planning and zoning meeting when they reviewed pretty much the whole thing, I could tell that the 8 people that were on that board are very detail oriented. And I think that they did take their time in this year going through it and really specifically looking at every word and phrase and how it was put in there and that it was meaningful and that, they really did their due diligence of looking at this and overall. So I think there was a lot of good discussion there, and I think you have some really good members on there. So I trust that they really knew what they were doing in putting this together. So I think it looked good to me and it sounded good to me with what they were presenting when we sat in on that meeting.
Any final comments?
I had a couple of different people. One of them, and this was sometime back, there was something in the packet, or I read it before, about parking. Front yard, side yard, and backyard. You have to have a permit. People say, I own my property, why do I have to have a permit? I don't know, then they said, well, it was also said that if you had a gravel or a cement pad, you could park there, it'd be just like a driveway. And he said, well, I'd have to get a permit for that too, don't I? So his question was, what kind of permits are we talking? How long are they good for? I don't know. I didn't know what to tell him.
Yeah, so the parking section is one that when you're reading through it, there's a lot of red text in there. There was a policy that the council adopted, I think, in 2009, and that talked about the width of driveways, the width of the curb cut that you can have, and then the standards for putting it in. If it's concrete, if it's gravel, a certain amount of sub-base, a certain amount of concrete. Those standards have always been there. The council adopted it, but they didn't quite transfer through staff real well. So really a lot of what you see in the parking code that's being added is verbatim that policy that's in effect and should be regulated right now. We're just writing it into code so that it's, one, it's enforceable, and two, it will transfer through staff when there's staff change. The parking areas and the permit, not too many years ago, we started getting zoning permits, and we got, zoning permits are required for fences, they're required for decks that don't require a building permit, sheds that don't require a building permit, And the reason for that is because there's city code that talks about them. They're regulated. There's a certain standard they have to be built to, setbacks that they have to meet. When you're not permitting them, it's hard to regulate them, and then it's hard to go back in time and see if when that fence was constructed or the shed was put in, was it compliant with code at that time? In a lot of cases, we don't even know who really owns the fence because it's right on the property line. With that, at the same time the commission did that, we talked about front yard parking, curb cuts, driveways, and where the commission settled and what was approved by the council was requiring that same zoning permit for driveways. Driveways and front yard parking areas, because those also, again, they're regulated by code, but without a permit, it's really hard to enforce and hard to make sure they're getting done to the standard. Parking has come up quite a bit in the past. We've had a few different times where the public has been here with nuisance complaints about the number of vehicles parked in a driveway. They're very difficult to handle through our nuisance code. They're difficult to get removed if they're not in compliance. And part of it is just our parking code didn't really regulate it. Front yard parking has to be on a driveway or an improved parking area, and we limit how big that can be. Side yard and rear yard parking was just allowed to be, you could cover your entire lawn with cars. You could park right up to the property line. So there is some new language in code now that's going to say that rear yard and side yard parking areas will have to be improved, whether that be gravel, crushed concrete, asphalt, concrete. If it's anything other than a hard surface, such as concrete or asphalt, that's going to have to be set back at least a foot from the property line, just so it doesn't spill over onto the neighbor's property. The thought and the hope is that in these side and rear yard parking areas, if it's an improved surface, hopefully it will limit how much people are going to do, and two, hopefully it will reduce some of the weeds, the grass, the other nuisance things that come with just having vehicles parked all over in your yard. The commission talked about that quite a bit, and they decided that if the front yard parking areas required a zoning permit, that any parking area then, whether it be side yard or rear yard, should also get a zoning permit. So the way the code is being proposed is to add improved parking areas to side and rear yards, and that they would require a zoning permit. Right now it's a $50 flat fee. The process is pretty simple. You can apply for them and pay for them online. We would want a site plan that's going to show the area that's going to be paved, what it's going to be paved with, but really that's about it. We may have to go out to verify the property lines or the setbacks or things like that if it's going to be a gravel parking area. But that was it was quite a long conversation with parking, and it's been in front of the Planning Commission at least 2, maybe 3 times since I've been here in the 8 years that I've been here, as a result of the nuisance complaints and people coming to the council with issues. The reason we haven't done anything in the past is because when you write code, you write it for the entire city. And it's hard to write code that the entire city is going to have to comply with for a few isolated instances. So the commission felt this was a pretty good compromise, a way to start trying to regulate some of the parking in residential districts without overburdening the general population in the entire city.
Did that clear it up, Jim?
All right.
But, no, and I think this is a good opportunity to say the public is welcome to come and make comments after it's read. So refer them to reading it online. Yep, no, that's to Andy or online, and also come to the hearing.
Right.
That's the place. Scott?
Now, Andy, is that gonna bother like the fairgrounds? Are they gonna have to do something down there when they park the cars during the fair and stuff like that on the Wind Fair property behind the buildings?
It shouldn't be because this is specific to residential districts. So the way our parking code is written, there's the residential standards, and then businesses and things like that, they have to provide parking according to our parking chart and our parking table. So it wouldn't necessarily apply to that. This is meant more for permanent parking, and that part of code is specific to residential properties.
And that's gonna have nothing to do with the snow emergency type thing? Where people can park their cars when we have a snow emergency off the street onto their yards?
I guess I don't know how this would affect it. Do you mean as far as if we're in a snow emergency, somebody just pulls their car up into the front yard and?
Isn't that what we request people to do, is if they're not, can't park in the street, they can park in their yards and everything else for the snow emergency? And
Yeah.
so they're gonna put a stop to that, isn't it then, or?
It wouldn't, it's not something that we're gonna go out and enforce daily. Right now, the code says that there's really no front yard parking allowed unless it's on a driveway or that parking area. And there's a number of cases where during a snow emergency, somebody will just pull up onto the front yard, and we haven't stopped them from doing that now. So this is meant more for permanent parking areas. Even if it's a large gathering, graduation time's coming up, if somebody's pulling cars off onto their front yard for an event like that, this code won't get in the way and prevent that.
Any other comments? Okay, does the council wish to take action to call for a public hearing regarding the land use code revision?
I'll make a motion to,
I believe that
Resolution?
it's in the packet to adopt a resolution calling for the
Yes.
public hearing. Yes, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
The resolution calling for public hearing on proposed revisions to land use code, city code, chapter 151 and 152 is made by Scott and seconded by Jim. Any discussion? Steve, roll call.
Quaid,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Grudig,
Yes.
Esplin, Nelson.
Yes.
Resolution carries. And I do want to thank Scott and Ginny for attending the planning and zoning meeting I had to skip out on. They enjoyed all 3 hours of that, I understand. So thanks for taking care of them, Andy. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And so moving forward now, we'll start the advertising process. So the code is online right now, and we're also going to be printing it. There will be a copy available at the library and a copy available at City Hall. So it's out there for everybody to see.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, we have personnel recommendation, pool and summer recreation seasonal hiring. We were warned last council meeting that we'd have additional, so we're getting started with that tonight. So, pool staff, Mariah Lorenz, Rachel Wright, Ava Van Norman, and Madison Prokosh. In recreation, DJ Perizzo and Marshall Bartlett. The council was to take action on the hiring, please.
I'll make a motion to recommend the hiring of the people so-called.
I'll second.
Motion by Scott, second by Jenny. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a liquor store part-time clerk. John's going to come and greet us again. Tell us what's up, John.
Need staff. John Nelson, liquor store manager. Recently, we had a part-time non-union employee resign. I looked through previous applications, and Tyler stood out as a candidate when he applied for the union part-time position. At that time, he withdrew his application from that position. I met with Tyler, and he's looking for a summer job, and he's very interested in coming aboard. So I am recommending to hire Tyler Patterson at a wage of $12.50 per hour with a review at 6 months with a potential move to $13.25. That is all in accordance to the non-union part-time wage scale that you council approved on January 17th.
Any questions from the council first? Is there a motion to that effect?
I would make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion Jenny, second Scott, to approve the hiring of Tyler Peterson as a non-union part-time liquor store clerk at a starting wage of $12.50 an hour. Any final comments, questions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? My motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Next item is closed session labor negotiation strategy in regards to Minnesota statute 13D-03. And what I'm going to ask is I would like just a 5-minute recess quick, if we can do that. So I, yep, and do that first. Yep. So I would like, prior to going into that, I'd like to see if there's any new business. I'm not seeing any comments there. Old business? Steve, I was going to ask you, the High Life situation, would you want to just give the public just an update on not a lot of information, but the council did pass that resolution last meeting. So if you just want to make comments, Steve.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, at the last council meeting, which was our board review meeting, the council did pass a resolution requesting state assistance. That assistance was targeted generally to 3 areas. One, wastewater, secondly, school, transitional aid, and third, for supportive housing. That resolution was passed and forwarded on to our state legislators. Senator Weber, who's our representing legislator in the Senate district, has introduced some legislation to the tax committee for some assistance. Our request was $18 million, which included $1 million for the school transitional aid, $6.5 million for wastewater assistance, and $10.5 million for supportive housing. Senator Weber's bill was for 14. He's looking at $1 million in transitional aid, $3 million for the wastewater support, and 10 for housing support. There was a hearing last week, Friday morning, so I attended that and testified with Senator Weber. That did get included in the Senate tax bill that is going to conference committee, and that conference committee is kind of meeting as this week as basically at the call of the chair. So we'll see how that progresses through that side. Once it's in Senate, or once it's in the tax conference committee, they will negotiate out any items or things like that. Should it survive the tax committee, it'll go to the full floor for a vote sometime in the next few days. The legislature has to adjourn next week. I think it's midnight Monday or midnight Tuesday. So they've got their work cut out for them to get a number of bills passed there. So that's where that sits. Really no new news on High Life from the company. They're, again, same position, looking to sell the facility. They have their bankruptcy filing, their updated filings. They're proceeding with the appearances that they have to do for that. So that is moving in that direction. So.
Thank you for the update, Steve. Okay, very good. Council comments, Scott?
With cleanup coming up, if people are gonna go through other people's stuff on the curbs and stuff like that, be courteous to their stuff and to the city. Put back what you don't take out, or if you make a mess, try to clean it up so people ain't having big messes spewed all over the place. And just be courteous to your neighbors and stuff like that. And just take care of your area and watch other people so that it doesn't go from the curb to the up by the house and people, other good stuff, their personal stuff gets taken. We've had that happen in the past. We just don't want that to happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Jim?
Just from driving around town, I've noticed that a lot of the people aren't paying attention to the radio or the paper or what has been said here. I see some awful large piles out there that I think you're going to be really disappointed with that will not be picked up. So with that, I guess that's about all I have.
Thank you, Jim. Jenny?
That's exactly my sentiments as what Jim said. It's 10 items in front of your house. No matter what size item, it's only 10 items, and there are way too many piles out there that are more than 10 items. So your dining room table and 4 chairs, that's 5 items right there. So, don't keep adding to that. These are things that you need to take to those sites, either out by Cottonwood Lake or by the arena, and drop these stuff off yourself. So I suggest if Saturday morning they go by and they don't pick up all your stuff because you have more than 10 things, hurry up and get it to those drop sites and take it there yourself, so that we don't have these things on our curb. So it is this Saturday. So next council meeting, I do not have to talk about citywide cleanup anymore. And then I also, because we don't meet again till June, I just want to say a big congratulations to all the 2023 graduates in our area, and just remind the young people out there that there are a lot of local jobs that we would love to have the graduates apply for. And if you do have plans of going away to college, we would love for you to return to our community and come back and work here for us.
Thank you, Jenny. Marv?
I guess I would offer my comment on the curb stuff too. I noticed that there's a lot of small items that would easily fit in your regular garbage, and they're now at the curb. So I think people have gotten some of the message, but not necessarily all of it.
Thank you, Marv. And I'm going to ask Jenny. My understanding is those small items can be taken to the locations, correct? The 2 locations that are mentioned.
Yes, the 2 locations will have big roll-off dumpsters or garbage trucks at both locations, by Cottonwood Lake and by the arena, Saturday morning, so people can come down and just bring your items and toss them in. So whatever you have, your smaller stuff, if it fits in your vehicle and you can easily take it yourself, that's a much better way to do it than to leave all this stuff on your curb. And you need to be a City of Windom resident, so.
And I'm just thinking out loud here that probably they're hoping a lot of those small items are going to be taken, then they don't have to take them to that location. But let's do the good job in getting Windom cleaned up. So, Dennis? I have nothing. Nothing tonight. Steve, anything further?
I think you covered citywide cleanup pretty well, but please read the guidelines in the newspaper. We spend a lot of money on advertising on the newspaper and on the radio to put the guidelines out there. They're in English and Spanish, so really look at that. I mean, I know it's a long ad. We tried to simplify it this year so people could really get through it in a very efficient way. So please look at that, because we want items to get picked up, and we don't want the hauler to be disappointed, nor the residents or your neighbors if there's a large pile left in your yard.
Thank you, Steve. You're correct. We covered that well. Next, I would like first of all, we went through all the other agenda items. I do not anticipate after the closed session that we would have any further business in action motion. And so what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to go into closed session following for labor negotiation strategy, once again under Minnesota statute 13D-03. If somebody would like to make that mention, and we will do that at 7:25 after just a 5-minute recess. The time will be 7:25 to go into that closed session.
I'll make the motion.
1 second.
Motion Scott, second by Marv. Any discussion?
So once you do that, we'll need.
Yep, and then we'll, yep,
Yep.
exactly.
And just so
We've
note,
covered-
once you have that and vote on that, then time of closed meeting and, yep, so the time of commencement, so we're good.
And we will document the time that we are out of that in the minutes.
Yep.
And the motion after we're completed to adjourn. Okay? With that, we stand in recess for 5 minutes.
Do you want the vote on the closed session?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I already did. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 5-minute recess.
Oh,